Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started here on our presentation. It is Smarter Packaging and Smarter Products, Unlocking Tracking and Analytics with a Smart Label Solution. So my name is Kay Irwin, and I work for AT&T Business in our Connected Solutions group. And that is an IoT solution provider. A lot of people don't think of AT&T as a solution provider with devices and software and APIs, but we have quite a portfolio of different solutions in the IoT space, and specifically in supply chain and tracking, location technologies, sensing. So I'll start out with introduction to the challenges in the supply chain, and then I'm going to go through some use cases and an animated video so we can talk through a lot of those use cases in more detail. And then we're going to talk to a customer, Port X, Blake Cooper. Thank you for being here. And then we'll have some Q&A at the end. But obviously we're a small group here, so feel free to ask questions during the presentation, please. So what are the biggest supply chain challenges? There are a lot. I could have 10 slides on this, but some of the major ones that we're seeing an increase in is cargo theft. So not only are porch pirates, with our Amazon deliveries, but all the way to full containers being stolen on the road, on rail, by organized crime. So that is increasing. Transportation delays, we saw a lot of this during COVID, and it has improved slightly, but we're still seeing congestion at ports. We're seeing, workforce shortages. And then the handoffs to that last mile delivery, making sure that the shipment actually arrives to the customer of record at their destination. And then we have technology adoption. Sometimes can be slow, especially in the supply chain with all of the different partners in the supply chain. Making that handoff and that integration seamless can be very challenging. So we're going to take a look at what we can do with technology to improve those situations. I'm going to go just into a little more detail on some of these numbers regarding cargo theft. 455 million last year. That's a pretty big number. Probably a lot wasn't reported as well, so I imagine it's actually higher. The year-over-year increase, it is accelerating the increase in theft from 2023 to 2024, 27% increase. And then the per theft average is over $200,000 per incident. Now, if you add in all the Amazon packages that are low cost, low value, it's probably much higher for most customers and logistics companies. So it's a significant issue. So what are those major supply chain use cases that we can improve with shipment tracking and condition monitoring technology? So arrival times, improving the customer experience, letting them know when a shipment is going to arrive, where it is at any given time. I know there's FedEx and UPS links that can be provided, but those are typically just when they're scanned, they're a point in time. They're not any, sort of real-time tracking. So being able to give a customer a link to a real-time tracking device and having them be able to access this. We've had customers say our customer service calls have been reduced significantly just by providing that link. So, critical shipments, customers are not calling us every 2 hours saying, hey, where is it now? Where is it? Where is it now? Tampering, we talked about the cargo theft. This particular device that we're going to be talking about, which is our disposable AT&T Smart Label, has a light sensor in it. So most customers are putting it inside the packaging so that when the box is opened, that light sensor goes off, it's triggered, and if it's not yet arrived to the destination geofence, you can set off an alert or a notification or alarm saying, notify someone. This could be being tampered with or stolen. So that is a huge benefit of the device, and the location. If it wasn't delivered to the destination address, but it is being opened, where it is at that time. Reducing loss, so monitoring the actual condition Temperature is a big one. You've got food and pharmaceuticals. The pharmaceuticals, the FDA requires every 15 minutes to log temperature when it's in transit. Excuse me. So this device will log all that sensor data, even if it's out of coverage. It does store and forward it. So if it's in flight or it's on a vessel, it stores that information and you have it. But more importantly, if there is a violation of that temperature threshold that you set, it can alert you immediately, so you can call the truck driver and say your reefer's not working. You can call your logistics provider and ask them to check into it because the temperature is rising and you're concerned about your cargo. Similarly with shock damage, it's going to log. You can set, if you're shipping glass, that might be different than a big, metal, transformer or something. So you want to be able to set the G-force and let a threshold, again, if it meets that threshold, you can log that event and alert someone, and you have a record of the location and the, excuse me, the location and the time of the event. So you know who was responsible for that shipment at that time. You know who is liable for that potential damage. Delivery notification, similar to, when it leaves the origin, you can get a notice. You can get a notice or alert when it arrives to the destination. This can also facilitate billing. Let's say, you may not know exactly when it arrives to your customer, but now you can automatically generate that invoice and send it to the customer if it's, you're waiting for delivery notification. And then sometimes that last mile is tricky because a lot of people use reverse or reusable devices in the supply chain, but reverse logistics, getting that back is a challenge. So having an option for a disposable tracker where you don't need to manage the reverse logistics, you don't have to ask your customer to package it up and ship it back to you. It makes it much easier to do that last mile delivery tracking. Apologize. Okay, we're going to talk more specifically about this particular device. It is the AT&T Smart Label. It is a cellular tracker. So it has a cellular module in here, as well as all those sensors that I talked about. So it is providing location, and it has a battery. It lasts up to 6 months. So it is sort of more of a short term, but it will cover both, the short term 2-day truck shipment. You can have more frequent reporting of location, or you can have it a 4-month vessel voyage, and you're tracking it, once every 6 hours or once every 12 hours. And on the ocean, it goes into a low coverage mode, so you're not eating up too much battery. But in addition to, obviously the most targeted are typically containers and household goods, but the benefit of this is it can also reduce your insurance costs if you're tracking your goods, as well as, reduce the cost of those replacements you have to send to the customer. We talked about all the sensors that are embedded in this, and we're going to go into more detail on each one of those for a use case here coming up. The operation on it is very simple. There's an on button right there. You press and hold this for a few seconds, and it turns it on, and it begins to communicate via the cellular network. So now it is connected, it is active, and then based on the reporting intervals you've set up, it will send the data, let's say every hour, and it will log the sensor data every 15 minutes. So every hour you would get that information. So there's a barcode on it and a QR code, as well as typically shipments will have barcodes on them, or packing lists have the barcode. So it's a pretty simple operation to just scan both of those to associate the two. So now you have this particular tracking device associated with that shipment ID for that particular customer. So it's a very simple operation just to associate the two in the platform. The other benefit, if you went as far as integration, you can do an API directly to your WMS, TMS, ERP system, and grab that data automatically. So if you scan your packing list, scan this, you've associated the two, now you want to pull in the customer ID, you want to pull in the destination address, instead of having to type it in, because you want to be notified when it arrives. So all that information can be loaded into the tracking platform automatically via API. So now it's being monitored, it knows the origin, where it's leaving from, it knows the destination it's intending to arrive to, so you're all set up. Does have adhesive on the back, you can pull that off and stick it either inside or outside the package, but as I mentioned, most folks will put it inside the package to take advantage of that light sensor, so they'll know when it's been opened. And you don't have to pull the adhesive off either, you can throw it into the package and just track. So we're going to take a look at a few different scenarios here. What are the different types of routes? This is a next day air going to Boston. So as I mentioned, it will turn off the cell network when it's in flight mode. So to have that flight safe mode, it detects pressure, air pressure, it detects acceleration, so it will turn off while it's in transit in an airplane. All the time, though, it is continuing to store the sensor data. So you don't lose any of that sensor data, it is stored, and as soon as the plane lands, it will upload all of that information to the cloud via the cellular network. The next one is an ocean freight. So let's say it's going via vessel, and you don't want it to continually try to ping the cellular network and run out of battery. So it goes into a low coverage mode where it will check every now and then, but it will not continue to check. And also we have all of the ports geofenced, so we know it's at the Port of Savannah. It arrived to the Port of Savannah. It is now gone from the Port of Savannah. We know it's left and it's on a vessel. So we have that intelligence as well to turn it into this low coverage mode, so you can survive a 4-month ocean vessel if you need to. The next one is the standard shipping via truck. So this particular shipment, I believe, is a reefer truck, so we'll be turning on the monitoring of the temperature in transit. So we have that available. We have any alerts if there's anomalies that occur. The last method of route is a rail shipment. So this is going via train. I think it's from Chicago to Oklahoma. And we're going to put several pallets and tracking devices in that rail shipment, and off it goes. So it's traveling around, those shipments are ready, and they are on their trucks and headed to their destination. So we're going to look at each one of those again to say, okay, this is the vessel shipment going from Long Beach to Hawaii. It's arrived to the port, and it's going to be leaving that port. We can get a notification saying, I've now left the Long Beach port, and I've moved into that low coverage mode. So I want to be able to last, and this is probably only a 6-7 day trip on the ocean, but we want to preserve the battery long enough to make sure we get that data from the sensors and it arrives successfully. The next one is a next day air or 2-day air via from Texas to Boston, and it looks like we've had a shock incident. So it's logging that data. So did it occur when it was being loaded onto the truck to go to the airport, or was there significant turbulence on the flight? Who knows? So we can log exactly the location and the time and date that that shock event occurred. So you can go back to your provider and say, hey, you know, we agreed that this is a fragile shipment and it shouldn't exceed X G-force. So all of that data is logged, and you'll receive a notification when the shock event occurs, and you can resolve that with your supply chain partners. The next one is the refrigerated truck shipment going from Kansas to Kentucky. So here we have an alert saying it's exceeded a threshold. It's some temperature threshold that was set, let's say it's pharmaceuticals and it's exceeded 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and we need to know that this is occurring and where is it in transit from Kansas to Kentucky. Let's call and make sure that we either get a new truck sent there and we fix the issue so that it can arrive and still and avoid obviously product loss. So that was temperature, and humidity it's tracking as well at the same time. So this is the rail shipment. It's going from Chicago to Oklahoma. In this case, we have 10 pallets that were loaded on a rail car, and we're tracking all 10 of those pallets. But we see on the map that one has deviated from the route. So, that doesn't make sense because all other 9 of the other ones are still on the rail route, and perhaps this is something that we need to notify about tampering or theft. So it's we look into it further and we receive an alert that the box has been opened. So again, this is utilizing the light sensor that is inside the device, and it was put inside the box on the pallet. That's notifying someone that, hey, this has been opened, it's not yet to the destination address. So can we retrieve that? Can we notify our loss prevention folks, get it back to the right location, and make sure all 10 of those shipments arrive successfully to Oklahoma? So it's all about notifications, it's all about gathering that data and then using it more in real time than after the fact. This is, I did want to point out an international shipment. This works in over 140 countries. It is a global SIM, so it provides visibility and coverage through most of the world. And we're doing a lot of testing right now, well, in all countries, Asia, we're doing some Singapore, Taiwan, Malaysia. We have Africa shipments going on, as well as South America and Latin America. We're doing a lot of testing there right now. So this is actually going to Japan, and it has arrived to the airport. So we know that. We're going to geofence the airport, but how long did it dwell? How long did it take to go through customs? So we can be notified once it leaves. Did it take 1 day, which is probably what you expect, or did it take 4 or 5 days and it's still sitting there? So letting us know that that shipment has now left the airport in Japan and has moved on to its final destination, and you'll be notified when it actually arrives to the customer itself. So that is the AT&T Smart Label in a nutshell. I didn't go over a couple of the things, which are it's using cellular triangulation and Wi-Fi sniffing to provide that location. And the location is very accurate. We are down in booth 707. If anybody wants to come and look, we've got some active cell trackers that you can see where they've gone. You can see where they're reporting right now, how accurate it is for where, almost exactly where our exhibit booth is in the convention center. So, as I mentioned, the battery will last about 6 months. The cellular module also has a 2G backup, so that's how it covers countries like Djibouti in Africa, where ships and things to, and that have not progressed to LTE or 4G or 5G. So it does cover all of those countries that have not upgraded their networks. So now we're going to go on to a discussion with our customer, Blake Cooper from PortX Logistics. Any questions right now before I move on to talk with Blake? Okay, well, we're going to see how he's using it in his logistics business. So would you mind just introducing yourself and your role?
Of course. And first, I'll just thank you for inviting me and the AT&T team for having me. This has been a great conference. I would not have been here if not for the invite, so I really appreciate that. And seeing some really interesting things, meeting some interesting people, so that's been wonderful. Yeah, my name is Blake Cooper. I work for PortX Logistics. We are a 3PL located, headquartered in Buffalo, New York, where I'm from. And just a little bit about my background. I was always sort of IT focused. I worked in higher ed for a while, but a few years ago I was looking for a change and, really wanted to stay local. And I found this company, PortX Logistics, doing really some interesting things in this space, which I was, more or less new to. But I love that they were a local company that had really taken off and grown a lot. They had weathered the pandemic and really come out ahead of that. I was very impressed with them and started talking with them, and we decided it would be a good fit, so I joined the company in 2022. PortX has always been very technology focused. As a 3PL, we're focused on containerized cargo. So, we're picking up from port and rail ramps. We are transloading that cargo in warehouses and then coordinating delivery for final mile. We are asset based, but we do have a logistics network that we leverage as well. So there are many logistical concerns. When I came on, I was sort of the general need technology person. We sort of talked about this earlier, Kay, how I was sort of keeping things running for a while, just networks and laptops and stuff. But fortunately, we've grown a really great team, and I've been able to focus on more of the things that really interest me, which are sort of working on these customer service value add sort of integrations. Our platform has always been to try to bring all of our data into one place for our customers. We offer them access to the same TMS we're using in-house so they can see what we can see. And that's sort of been our philosophy from the beginning, and I'm sure we'll kind of get into why the AT&T Smart Labels were a good fit for us for that reason especially, but yeah.
That's great. Thanks for that introduction. That's very interesting. What are your customers, as a logistics provider, are they asking for tracking? Are they asking for or even demanding these types of solutions on their shipments?
Yes, absolutely. Tracking, as I understand it, when our company started in 2018, drayage, the containerized cargo piece, was always a little bit of a visibility black hole, they would say. And part of our differentiation, what we offered was sort of that seamless visibility, because before you could get it, you could get it from the port, from a steamship website. You could see when it's on the water. Then depending on who your warehouse was, you could get some information about the transloading. And then, you would need to coordinate separately to get tracking over the road. And part of what our company did successfully was to kind of bring those things together. So, and in 2018, I think that was a huge selling point. And it still is. There are customers who really rely on that. But these days, I would say that type of tracking, specifically the location tracking, is more sort of table stakes for this business. I think being able to provide that is sort of almost a given. And so we've always looked for ways to kind of become more diverse or fluid in that area. Now it's more about that than just providing the simple tracking. It's how do we branch out.
And what specific challenges did you face? Was it, dwell time, lost products, any of those specific challenges that you were trying to address with the solution?
Yeah, I mean, planning is everything, and without that visibility, the planning becomes difficult or impossible. Also our model, because it's transparency, it's visibility for our customers, they're often, we talk about our customers as being partners. A lot of companies do, but we really do partner with them on the solutions that we provide. We're the experts, and we try to kind of help them find the best way to do it. But they will tell us what they think, of course, and we try to be receptive to that. So planning is everything, and yes, dwell time, demurrage on those containers is extremely expensive. It's about, leveraging your resources in the area to try to make the most of it and choose the right thing, often 2 or 3 steps ahead. And yeah, the visibility, again, is sort of the minimum requirement to be able to make those kind of decisions quickly enough and accurately enough to win.
Yeah, agree with that. How easy was it to integrate the Smart Label solution into your processes and your workflow in the warehouses and all that?
Yeah, well, it's really important, just speaking from the technology side, it's extremely important that any solution we adopt be able to feed into where our data is. We kind of compile everything in our TMS. That's how we provide the visibility for our customers. Right. That's how we make decisions. That's our single source of truth, really. Everything that's in there, it has to be, up to the minute and accurate. So right away, we're looking for solutions that meet that prompt. And That's something the AT&T Smart Labels delivered. At the same time, I think something this solution does really well is give you options, because with the dashboard that's provided, it's also very easy right out of the box once you power one on and stick it in a shipment to be able to provide customers with some kind of visibility. So I didn't have to, hurry up and develop something just to make sure that they could have eyes on that. That platform existed. Now it's about leveraging that data and going a little farther with it. But so that's really nice out of the gate. Very, very easy to implement that way. Like you mentioned earlier, it's a very simple device. You power it on. You can associate it in the dashboard with the particular cargo or shipment that you're using it for. And, we rely on our warehouse teams for that. And it's been incorporated into their workflow really seamlessly. I can always tell how well one of these things is working. Well, to be honest, if I don't hear anything from anyone, it's either working very well or not at all. Right. But fortunately, this was working really well out of the gate. And I know our team in Canada was really, really pleased. That was another piece of this. Probably getting ahead of myself a little, but, we have a team in Canada and we do a lot of cross-border shipments. And it was critical for us to have something, like you said, that has that global capability, because our tracking solution before didn't have that. So we were essentially running blind, or our customers were running blind on some of our shipments from Canada. So, we were able to, ship these to our warehouse in Canada, give them a quick overview on how they work. And it has really just kind of been on rails since then. I'm looking forward to expanding more with how we use the data, but that's sort of the next step. But getting onboarded was great.
That's a good point, because we have several customers who have said, I have incoming product, I need to know more about that shipment and when it's coming in. I'm sending these labels to my supplier in Mexico, who is trucking that product up to my manufacturing and assembly site in the U.S. So you can add your partners just by sending them the devices, and the simple operation makes it super easy for them to just turn it on and put it in the package. One other thing I wanted to mention about, you mentioned out of the box, it's easy to use because the platform is ready and available and you start it and you're tracking, but then you can schedule a phase 2 where you have that integration, right? Where you say, oh, okay, now it would be easier. Now that I have this up and running and it's successful and it's working well and it's valuable data, let me interface that data to my system. Let me pull the destination address or the customer ID so we can have that two-way interface, and then it really becomes that much more valuable, right? So how has this data influenced any, day-to-day business decisions or strategy going forward, that type of thing for your operations?
Yeah, well, I mean, all the ways that we talked about in terms of, planning ahead, especially with containerized cargo, so important. That's part of it. And just having the quality of data, the reliable data, is critical. And, we use that in a variety of ways for planning on every stage. So, once these are active in the shipments, we can use the milestones feature to know, like, for instance, when we're crossing the border. And, we can be ready for any delays that come up with that. It does happen. So, being able to see that and have eyes on that while it's in progress is so much better than hearing from a driver whenever they have a chance, right? Because they're talking with people at the border. They might be, pulling over. They might be in the middle of something. So, our ability to make those plans and to inform our customer, really without a solution like this, would only be as good as, the willingness of the driver or other people on the ground to communicate with us. Right. So having something like this just gives us that sort of baseline level of visibility where we can make those decisions. And at least, if something's stuck at the border for 4 hours, we know something's up. We know to start making some phone calls probably quite a bit sooner than we would have otherwise. So that type of just being proactive really is everything for us.
Yeah, and I probably one thing I missed in my very short deck of 2 slides was I should have had a detailed screenshot of the platform because it does have a graphical view of all of the sensor data. So on the dashboard for a particular shipment, it has a big map. So you're seeing the route and you're seeing the breadcrumb and you're seeing its current location, but you also have a graph of shock data, how many shocks there have been, temperature data, you can switch it to centigrade or Fahrenheit, air pressure, tilt. I forgot to mention, if you have an important product that is, let's say, a drum of oil going to Africa, you can put it, when you activate the device, you activate it at a particular orientation, and you'll know if that tips over whatever degree you want to. So let's say, we had some, like USAID sending product, food and things to Africa, and they wanted to know when something tilted because it was a liquid form, and they lost product, when it's on a vessel or when it's on the truck and going across roads that are not smooth. So that was an interesting one. So it does do the tilt angle as well as temperature and humidity. So lots of different power inside this this small package.
And I'll say too, Kay, about that dashboard. You mentioned everything like that tilt factor is so interesting. Not every customer needs to know that level of detail in our business, certainly, but just seeing it on the dashboard, and you can really kind of view the different layers. You can check and uncheck different layers, so you can see what you want to see. But at the end of the day, what I think is interesting, and I'm sitting at a desk in my office. I'm not one of the people on the ground, and I'm certainly not the customer. So it's all a little abstract for me, but I find that the dashboard really does tell a story, right? If someone in my position can see, okay, this is how long it took to get to the border, this is how long it took to cross, how close are we to, hitting the time milestones we meant to hit, and, just watching the sort of, like you said, the temperature, or the shock, or the tilt, seeing those things is really fascinating and gets my mind working. I imagine that's sort of a benefit of it too, is just the visual representation that really can kind of tell a story for the customers. That's something we find valuable.
And I think all those things you mentioned and the data that is collected on these devices and these shipments feeds into one of the major themes of this whole conference, which is AI.
Yeah.
Where we need data to evaluate and be smarter and learn from the history. So while you're, gathering all this historical data on all these shipments and all the sensor data, what kind of insights will that provide in the future when you have an automated, system telling you, based on history, this is what you need to take a look at, or this is what might happen.
We spoke about this earlier, Kay. The, one thing that our company did really, really smartly at the beginning was decide that we were going to have everything in one location. And I don't think they were thinking ahead to the, future of AI, where we're going to be able to make intelligent decisions. They were just thinking about customer ease of use. They were after that like single pane of glass.
Right.
So, but fortunately now we have a setup where data streams into a central repository, and I just think that's going to be so valuable and give our company a leg up as we start to explore some of those more AI enhanced solutions that the keynote talked about, and that people are probably always talking about at a conference like this. But this is another way that this, that's sort of something we need for any solution we adopt, that has to be able to feed into that, and we have to be able to take that data and run with it. Because like you said, we don't know necessarily what solution is going to be provided or fed or powered by that data in the future, but we know there will be some. So we want to be ready for that too.
Data is valuable.
Oh yes, very valuable.
So you're ready for that leap, that next leap.
I hope so.
Last question. What advice would you give to organizations just starting out and thinking about adding tracking to their operations?
Yeah, so I thought about this a little. We really like to listen to the customer first and hear what, not even just one customer or another, but in the aggregate, what are customers looking for? What kind of solutions do they need? You have to start there, of course. And then, one thing I always say and one thing I always look for is something that, doesn't have you chasing the data down. Like we were talking about data and how important it is to be able to port that and move that around and adapt that. It's very, very important for us that the data comes to us and we don't have to go find the data. So, I think that, the dashboards are great and, but it's almost a little tongue in cheek when I'm talking to customers on a demo or something. I'm saying, I know everyone says their dashboard is going to be the last dashboard you need and it's going to solve the problem, but ours really will be, I promise. But, at the end of the day, it's just about providing that right kind of solution for your company and for your customers. And beyond that, you just have to know what you need and what your company is capable of supporting. But it never hurts to go with an option that's easier to implement because not everyone has the cycles for stuff like that.
That is true. Well, thank you so much for the
my pleasure.
insights. It's been a pleasure working with PortX and
likewise.
with you, Blake.
Thank you.
So, questions out there for either of us? Any kind of questions, technology or other?
I think they'd like you to just step to the mic because they're recording this. So,
Hi, Toby Norman, Auburn University. I'm wondering, when you were developing the label, were there any common issues that you were facing? And if so, how did you all solve those issues after discovering those?
Well, one major issue that always has to be addressed is the battery life. So it's always a trade-off between size of device and battery life, right? So if this is a supply chain device, if this is a disposable, kind of last mile tracker, it needs to be small, it needs to be disposable, but it needs to cover the use cases, obviously, in the supply chain. Well, that spans from an overnight that's going to get there tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. delivered to, like I said, a 4-month ocean vessel. So that's always a challenge in deciding, because, and I will say, there are new labels that probably will be out in a couple years that are completely flat and printable. And that's going to be a little bit of a game changer, right? When you're able to replace your current UPS or FedEx label with a tracking label that can go through a printer or be on a reel and go through a printer. So we're talking Jetsons and things, but we're doing some testing on that as well in the future. So size, battery life, zoning in on the use case. This covers a lot of use cases with all of its sensors. So that flat label is going to have a much smaller battery. Maybe it only lasts a week total. So it's for those short-term, shipments, not for anything longer term, and maybe not as sensor-rich as these devices. So that was one of the major concerns. Yeah, I would say, the components. The other thing is, cell modules are not small and they're not cheap either. You've got a cell module plus all those sensors in here and a SIM. So how do we make it as low cost as possible, small as possible? It's using Cat-M. And we have a new version coming out that will be using Cat1 Biz, if that means anything to you all. It also does do NB-IoT, which is much more prevalent internationally. But it does provide really good coverage in those international areas where it has that, and it has the 2G backup. So this was more like the Cadillac of trackers. It covers all of those use cases. I think in the future we have a roadmap with a couple different versions, right, that will not do everything but be more specific to certain use cases. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Hi, thank you. That was very insightful. Question to AT&T or your guest. When you mention giving insights or visibility to the customer, how are you achieving that? Do they have to log into the platform? I mean, doesn't that create another step, credentials and login, or how are you providing that visibility?
Yeah, I can speak to what we do at PortX. So we provide them. We can sort of segment a tenant of our TMS for their business with us. It is an extra step. They do log into that, and we always say that that's not a requirement of working with us. That this is a value add. The idea is that if you need up to the minute, tracking or information like that, you can have it and not rely on our team. Shout out to our team, by the way. They do a great job. They're so on top of this stuff. They really do provide great customer service. But our platform is sort of if you need this to go farther, you can do it that way. Outside of that, I think it's really a value to provide everything in one location. That's always been our sort of goal. And I think by doing that, not every customer will take advantage of this, but the ones who do really become involved, and that's when they really become, and that's what our company is all about, is creating those partnerships where customers feel like they're a part of it. They feel like we're handling the business, we're doing what we need to do on our end, but they're at least, involved and aware and up to date with their information. So providing that is really what we want to do first and foremost. So that's our approach to providing that, and obviously, again, like a solution like this benefits us because it's data that can be fed into this platform. So there is one additional login, but it's the only one you'll need from us. And if you dig in, and our TMS, has the location data, it has documentation, there's messaging, you can reach out to us directly. There's a bunch of great features. We have a great partner with Turvo. We've worked with them closely to build really the TMS that's perfect for what we do. So, and part of that is that extensibility, so we can bring in data from elsewhere. And, customers no longer have to check the Steamship website and then the warehouse, call the warehouse, and then get on a different app to track the driver. Those things are all in one place. So that's how we approach that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great to have. Your customers need a lot of information that's in your TMS. Regarding the tracking platform, actually, for every single shipment, you can copy a link and email that to your customers, so they do not need a login to the platform. They do not need a username and password. They can click on that link and get the information about just their shipment. So there's no need for username and password for your customers if all they're doing is accessing that shipment's location and sensor data. So there's a little bit of, it's a slightly smaller subset of information than that is on the greater platform, but it's everything that a customer would need to look at, right?
And those things go a lot farther than just the customer too, because those customers have customers. And with those links, and our system can do this too, once they have a login to our system, they can generate links like you're describing that aren't you don't have to log in. It's just there's no sensitive information. It's just the information that they need, and it works very similarly. And the good thing about that is they can turn it around and share it with their customers. So now it's not just providing value in that one sort of scope. Suddenly, this thing could have legs, and we've done shipments with sensitive cargo, time-sensitive things that are very tense for a lot of people, and we see those links go around, and you can see who viewed it, and the numbers go up, and everyone's kind of watching this, and I tend to think each of those could have been a call or an email, and so there's a lot of value you gain when that snowball starts rolling a little bit, and it all just comes from being able to share that link. That's tremendously valuable.
Automating data, automating access to it.
Yeah.
Solves a lot of problems.
It absolutely does.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? I think we're probably about out of time, but thank you all for joining us.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Blake.
Great. My pleasure.